So I've been thinking a lot about trans issues because as a gender nonconforming person, this shit affects me a lot. I constantly get asked if I'm a they them. That's literally what people say. Are you some kind of they them? Before I even say a word, people apologize to me about assuming my gender. I don't bring up my gender. I simply say that my name is Ryan, and because they assume that's a guy's name, and they see the way I dress and the way I act, to them, this means that I'm non-binary or trans, which in their eyes means the same thing, that I'm some kind of fucked up woman. The thing is, fucked up woman is probably closer to my gender identity than the term non-binary. Not very concerned with labels. I know they mean a lot to other people, less so to me. So this is all to say that being perceived as a fucked up woman is fine for me. I understand that that's not the case for many people who look like me. The thing about gender is that there are always assumptions. Here are some things you might not know about me. I have received gender care, gender affirming care. I'm not going to go into the details about what that means, but this is an experience that I've had in the state of California. Am I trans or am I cis? The answer to that question is that I do not know. To me, the answer is not important. However, I know it's important to a lot of my friends, people I care about. Many of them build their identities around their gender and their transness, and I understand that their gender matters a lot to them. I respect that deeply. So when I talk about trans issues affecting me, one of the primary things I think about is how it affects my friends. They're the people who get hurt first when stuff like this happens. My particular opinion about my own gender is that I could probably live a very happy, healthy life as a trans masc person, a trans man, or a non-binary person. If I was younger, I would probably go ahead and do that. The thing is, I'm old as hell, and we live in a fucked up society. This is a fucked up country, and it feels dangerous to identify as trans, so I don't. Maybe to some of you that means that I actually am trans. I don't know. Like I said, I'm not really concerned about the answer to that question. The concept of transitioning to me feels temporal. I often think about what it would be like to be born in the United States in the 1800s or 1900s. I always think about that as sort of some metric maybe for understanding myself, because I do know, I feel it in my bones that if I was born during that time period in history in that place, I would have 100% transitioned. I probably would have just dressed like a man and acted like a man and told everyone I was a man and done everything in my power to have people perceive me that way. I think it's safe to say that I would be considered by historians a trans man. And my rationale for that is I would not want to live in a society that treats women the way women were treated. And I think that's probably true for a lot of other places and a lot of other time periods. Today, I don't know. For a moment, it felt like things were getting better for trans people, but I don't think I have that hope anymore. Things are getting worse. Have you ever been in a room, like a live performance with a trans artist, and she's singing to you a song that she wrote about how scared she is about her future, and you can feel it, and everyone in the room, many of them trans women, are starting to cry because they can feel it too. Just shit is real. Even in California, which to many people is like, oh, it's such a like liberal state. People here are scared. Trans people are afraid. And for me, I know that being seen and perceived as a woman in this time and place doesn't particularly bother me. In fact, it sometimes offers me protection. So I still consider myself in most contexts to be a woman. I'm open to considering myself as other things such as genderqueer, but I know it's not the same for other trans people. I know that for many people, their identities feel less temporal. They feel solid and fixed, like no matter when or where they were born, they would be exactly who they are in their gender right now. And I know that's important, how they identify and feel about themselves. They're under real threat in this society in a way that I am not. And I acknowledge that. The thing is, I'm not even sure that means anything these days. It seems to me that the mere act of me existing in public wearing clothes seems to indicate to people that I am transgender. It doesn't matter to them how I personally feel or identify, because I am perceived that way a lot of times. People will go out of their way to tell me that they know about the they-thems and the trans people. And once I indicate, no, she, her is fine, and no, I'm not trans, they seem relieved. And then they feel free to unload their bigotry on me, their transphobia, which is disgusting. Not just for me, but for every single trans person I know and the people that I worry about every day. Your gender identity, the way you feel inside, ceases to matter. The only thing that matters is the outside. You are seen as gender nonconforming, which to many people just gets perceived the same way as being trans. But when you're like, no, this is a little different than that, I'm not trans actually, even though many of my friends are, you get asked to choose a side. This happens to me quite a lot. And what I want to ask people is this: why do you care? Why are you so threatened by the concept of someone's gender being different than your own? Why does it have to be the same? Could we have different ideas about gender? Is that not possible in your worldview? Why does the concept of not understanding someone's gender leave you so confused and bitter and angry that you are standing here in this bar or this hardware store or this punk show telling me you're not bigoted, you don't want to assume things, but... And then you continue to go on with your assuming and your bigoted things that you think. What the fuck about me makes you think that I would be on your side? Let's assume that there is no such thing as gender, only sex, male and female. Everyone else, all of the trans and non-binary people throughout history, they're just confused or mentally ill or wrong. Let's assume that. So why does it matter? I've already told you that if I'd been born in a different time, I probably would have transitioned. I probably would have been about as happy and satisfied then in my gender as a trans person as I am now. What would me transitioning do to you? Like, if I'm just living my life, minding my business, being trans, how the fuck does that affect you or anyone else? Why? Because the mere act of existing and wearing certain clothes and having certain mannerisms, that makes me a fucked up person? It's obvious to me how the ways that these kinds of people look at the world and the way that they see trans people, in trans people's bodies and the way that they inhabit the world, this bleeds into more than just trans people. Like, anyone who has a physical presence in this world who does not fit into a proper gender mold becomes subject to intense scrutiny in their worldview. Like, this happens to me all the fucking time. People just, like, confront me and reveal this to me in public places. And when you get to the bottom of it, you find out that they don't actually, like, care about my gender identity or my pronouns. They don't care about any of that. The thing that bothers them is that I have a mullet and I buy my pants from the men's section of Target. That's, like, ultimately what it comes down to. That's what fucking bothers them. Let me just give you the honest fucking truth, dude. Men's pants have more pockets and they fit me better because I have no hips. No hips. The honest to God truth is that these people think that I'm wearing these clothes to make a statement about my gender, when in reality, I'm just wearing clothes that feel more comfortable on my body. You know, I never go into situations thinking about how I'm going to have to prepare myself for being misgendered the way that my non-binary and trans-masc friends have to, you know? I understand and deal with every day the fact that most of the world sees me as a woman. But if I'm perfectly honest with you, I don't particularly dislike being a woman. I think being a woman is fucking cool. But that doesn't seem to matter to people. People aren't concerned about what I really think about my gender. They're concerned with how I look and the way that I present myself. And the fact that I dress like a genderqueer person in San Francisco has meaning to them. And all of a sudden I am put in this position where I have to explain what pronouns mean and why some of my friends use the pronouns they, them. God forbid. Like, actually, fuck all of you. For putting me in a position where I have to be the spokesperson for the trans and non-binary experience. Being trans and non-binary is not an aesthetic. It's not. And in fact, it's quite dehumanizing to look at someone who looks like me and think, yup, this is an expert right here on gender. This is the person that I'm going to approach, this full stranger, and I'm going to ask them about gender right now, right here. Because to them, that makes sense. I've been wanting to make this video for a long time. Actually, it's ever since like around 2020, 2021, when J.K. Rowling came out as a humongous transphobe. I've been thinking about this essay she published. It's a hateful piece of work, but there were some lines that stuck with me, and I've been thinking about them, if not every day, maybe like a couple times a month. Like, I just keep thinking about that fucking essay she wrote. I think it was 2020 when she wrote it. I don't know if that essay still exists, if it is still published on her blog or whatever. I will link it in the description of this video, but I'm going to go ahead and paraphrase what she said. She said that one of the reasons that she was digging her heels in so hard about her bigoted beliefs is that because she thinks if she had been born in a different time, like if she had been a little younger, she would have come out as a trans man in order to escape misogyny, in particular the misogyny she experienced at the hands of her father. And many people have scoffed at those lines and discarded them without much analysis. And I don't think that's the correct response. I think that we shouldn't scoff at that experience of gender, because I don't think she's necessarily wrong. You know, like, I think there's some people who, when exposed to the concept of being trans and the fact that it's like a possibility, it suddenly becomes like a thing that you can consider, a thing that you can choose. And I think that was the case for me. I think that my experience with gender is very fluid and temporal. However, the problem with J.K. Rowling is that she uses this temporality of her experience as an excuse to downplay the needs, the very physical, fundamental needs and freedoms required by trans people to exist. She doesn't want them to exist. She considers them a threat, in fact. And she uses her anecdotal experience about her own gender as proof of this. And just because you fear that you would have identified as a trans man if you were younger and more susceptible to gender ideology, that's not an excuse for being hateful and afraid, literally afraid of trans people. Because to me, it's obvious that J.K. Rowling has these deep-seated fears based upon this fact about herself. And the only reason she's scared is because she considers trans people less than cis people. Because otherwise, if she wasn't afraid, if she didn't think that trans people are less than cis people, then why would she ever be afraid of having accidentally become one of them? You know, it's just like so obvious that like she thinks that one of those would have been the worst decision ever. When the truth is it literally doesn't fucking matter. Like if J.K. Rowling was born at a later date and came out as a trans person because trans is cool and trendy or whatever, like what about her life would have significantly changed? Like she still would have struggled with misogyny. Like this is like a thing that trans people still experience. Like it wouldn't mean she could escape it, you know? And it's not just like trans people, because the reality is that everyone faces issues with their gender. The thing is that trans people have a particular experience of it, and they get to perceive these different ways of interacting with the world that cis people don't. And I think that's why they have like they're dialed in to like what that experience means in a way that cis people aren't. And you know, non-binary people have to deal with a whole buttload of trash, and I'm just like not even gonna get into it because it's like, you know, I'm not even sure I'm a non-binary person, but I do know what it's like to be assumed a non-binary person in San Francisco. People will be nice to me, you know, until they find out that I'm normal, as in a cis person, even though they hate the word cis. And then all of a sudden, it's like they'll start talking shit about every single trans person or non-binary person they know or have ever heard of. Like, it's just complete, like, word vomit time, and I'm just, like, the receptacle. And this always puts me in this position, this extremely uncomfortable position of, like, you know, me not even being sure of my gender identity, to be in this position where I am forced to defend other people's gender identities. I'm being forced into this position where I have to defend gender ideology. when the reality of the situation is I am probably just a weird-looking lady who likes wearing men's clothes. They like throwing us all together in the same bag, even when our experiences are different. They see us all as the same. Like, I come in here, I come to this bar, never said 2 cents about gender to you, never mentioned a word about pronouns, never corrected you about pronouns, because when does that ever come up? For me, never. No one ever misgenders me. Not like that. And all of a sudden, these people are bringing up gender. You're the one who brought gender into this, you weird little freak. I just came in here to get a drink. Anyway, Evan Williams is great. Cheers.